Hey guys, Brendan, by the way, the audio guide. Today I'm going to show you a quick guide to getting started in Logic Pro X. The goal of this video is to not be so in depth and go through every single feature of Logic. We just want you to feel comfortable so you can get your song ideas out of your head the easiest way possible. So you don't have to stumble upon, oh, well, what does this button do? Or what does this thing do? So when you first open up your project, you're going to see this window. Now, what in the world does all this mean? Well, you need to think about what you want to add to your project. Do you want a software instrument, which is a virtual instrument or an instrument that is built into your computer? Audio, are you tracking something? Drummer, which is Logic's built-in automatic drummer that you can kind of mess with. External MIDI controls an outboard MIDI controller using MIDI built into Logic. And then guitar or bass is just a setup that is basically an audio track that Logic has created a couple of presets if you want to get started on guitar or bass. One thing to note is that you want to make sure that your input device and your output device is selected on your audio interface. If you're not sure what an audio interface is, check out my video on what audio interfaces are. And then obviously you want to make sure that your input is corresponding with the one that you have plugged into your audio interface. I'm just going to do software instrument. Open library means it will open the Logic library of instruments so you can choose from some built in. So let's say you don't have any third-party instruments. That's the one we're going to select. Boom, create. So now we've created an instrument track and Logic just defaults to the classic electric piano. So if you want to get out of this annoying library, then you just click on this file cabinet. What is in this file cabinet is all the Logic instruments, and you can download more of those if you want over here under download additional content. And then you can go through here and click on the things that you want and just hit install, and it will automatically install those to the proper directories. It will use your boot up drive or the drive that Logic is installed on to install all of those library packs. So I like to just pick my instrument and get out of that because it kind of gets a little bit messy when that's open. Moving over to right here, I is your information tab. So I like to personally leave this open all the time, but you can close it if you don't have a big monitor. This will basically tell you all your information about your track, anywhere from quantization to swing, velocity, and then this tells you a little bit about the instrument. And then of course you have right here what is like your channel strip if you were to have a big console. You can just double click this if you want an EQ. Pops up Logic's automatic EQ. You can double click this right here for a compressor. And then what happens when you start using compression, that'll show you how much gain reduction is going. These are MIDI effects. So if you have MIDI information recorded, then you can just click on one of these and mess with those. And then right here is where you will add plugins. So these are EQ, compressor, delay, all those fun things. Right over here is your buses. If you're not sure what a bus is, that is like an aux track. And if that doesn't make sense, head over to my video on what a bus track is. And then going down, this is your output. So you can set this to no output, different outputs, buses. One cool thing that I like about Logic is you can click on the buses, for example, or the output, and it will change this thing on the right so you can have quick access. Oh, what was on my bus too? Oh yeah, that's the chorus and space designer, and this one looks like it's the same thing, and then go to your stereo output. And then below that is your automation reader. So this tells the computer which mode that you want your automation in, whether it's in read or if you want to latch and kind of automate something on the fly and all that fun stuff. And then you can obviously toggle it on and off with this power switch here. Then below that you have your pan knob. So this obviously is just panning. So if you want it left or right, then you can tell it to do that. And then right here is your volume fader. This is where your volume fader is sitting. And then on here, this is your peak clip level. And this is your level meter. And right here, if you watch, you can figure out your average levels. And then of course you have mute and solo your track. And then moving over to your right here you have add new track. So let's just do an audio track. And on this one, you can figure out if you want it mono, stereo, left, right, surround, depending on your input. So you don't want to set it on stereo if you have just a mono input, like one microphone, because look, now it's hanging in the left channel, and that can get really annoying. So make sure that you turn it on mono if you're just capturing a microphone or an instrument. So same layout on the audio track. So then if we head up here, there's a more advanced toolbar that you can pop out. This turns on a quick help guide, which is really cool. I first saw this feature in Ableton. If you just hover over things, then it will tell you what everything is. So this button right here is your smart controls. And what that does is it takes some key features of plugins and kind of puts them all in one simple, easy to use layout. So if you have to edit something on the fly, you can open that up and say, oh, I need to lower my threshold, raise my ratio, and then you don't have to go into the plugin itself and kind of navigate, wait, where was all that stuff? It just kind of does it for you right here. This opens up your mix window, and your mix window is obviously laid out like a classic console. This one is your audio editor, so you can click on audio files and that will pull up your editor. And then right here you have duplicate track, you have toggle solo on your selected track, or untoggle whatever's selected. So if you can't figure out what track is soloed, then you just hit this thing and it will clear all of it. Or you can click on solo on one track and hit option click, and that will clear all solos. Same with mute. As a general rule, I like to say that option clears almost everything. So if you have pan set there and volume here and here, then you can hit option click, option click, option click, click, and it will reset everything to its normal default parameter. This button right here is automation. So you can edit things. If you look at automation, then you can edit things like volume, certain parameters of plugins, pan, all those good things. And what's cool on Logic 10 is you can turn that on and off. So let's say we have our volume automation going like this, and actually maybe we don't want that, so we're just going to turn that off, and then that way we don't have to go and delete everything. And then of course this is like what we had in our sidebar. You can read that, so it will just read the information, or you can latch, touch, and kind of make those decisions on the fly as you automate your own plugins. This is your global window. You can figure out different things within this menu, like your tempo, signature marker, and you can change all those things within here. Right here is your flex pitch tool. This is something that's cool in Logic 10. It's kind of like Melodyne, if you've ever heard of that. It allows you to easily manipulate vocal performances without affecting the sound too much by making like auto-tune sounding things. It's pretty transparent. So right here, that one I was talking about was flex pitch, but you can also do it to other instruments. Like monophonic, you can put on a bass and tighten that up. You can click on that and then head over here and say, okay, I'm going to quantize that audio to 16th notes. That's a really cool feature, and it's pretty good. It does a pretty good job at doing that. And then obviously polyphonic means multiple voices, and speed, tempophonic, slicing, rhythmic, drums, you know, all that kind of stuff. This button right here will catch your playhead. So what that means is that when my project is playing and I can't see my playhead, I can hit this and it will always track my playhead wherever it is in the project. Then moving up here, you have rewind, fast forward, jump to the beginning of your project, or you can push enter on the keyboard, play and record. And then if you want to customize all this stuff, then you just right click, customize control bar, and there are so many options if you click custom that you can mess with. So obviously I don't want to get into every single one of these things, but take the time to kind of experiment. You know, right here you have your sample rate, you have your input monitoring, you have your software monitoring, low latency. That's one that I always like to pull up. I'm not sure why they don't have that as a default. But this is a cool way so you can kind of customize what you're used to and you want on your toolbar. And then of course these buttons depend on what you chose for your toolbar, so I won't go over all of those. You can kind of experiment with those. This is your snapping mode. So basically what that means is when you drag clips, how is that going to behave? Is it going to snap by bars or beats or divisions or ticks or whatever? I usually like to leave mine on smart. It does a really good job at snapping. Right here, this is how your audio files will behave if you drag them. So on overlap, if you take two pieces of audio, basically they will overlap. On no overlap, it will take two pieces of audio and the dominant one will get rid of and delete that bottom piece. So then you're just left with the dominant piece. I like to keep mine on X fade because almost all the time I'm crossfading my things. Right here, this allows you to open up and expand the view of your waveform. So we have our waveform right here, so we can make that as small as we want or as big as we want. So that's really helpful when someone sends you tracks and you can't really see the definition, then you can turn up the definition of those. So this button right here will do a vertical auto zoom, so it will put all these things into your arrange window. Right here is another way to zoom, and right here as well. And then up here you have your list editor. So here are events. So basically what this is saying is these are all the events in your project. This could apply to MIDI. So if we were to have some MIDI information right here. So when I just have my project selected on nothing, then it says, okay, you've got these pieces of information in your project. When I click on the MIDI, it says this is the information within your MIDI. And then you can view a bunch of different information about your MIDI. You can create certain things if you want within this window. You can create pitch bends, controllers, sustain pedals, and all those kinds of things. Then you have your marker, you have your tempo where you can create multiple types of tempo if you want, depending at your position in your song. You can also do that in your global window. And then of course your signature and your key, which you can also change if you want to change it a separate bar. Next to that, you have your notepad. This is really helpful when you're taking notes on a mix. You send your client the track and they have a couple notes. You just throw them in here, and then that way they're all maintained within your project and not floating in some random email in your inbox. So this is the project notes, and then you can have a track note. So if you have notes for individual tracks, then you can make them there. Right here accesses your loop menu. And then right here is your file bin. So under project, these are all the files that are saved within your project and that it's referencing. And then in here, you can access other projects on your computer or other files. And then this one is more of a finder view of the same thing. So what's cool about this is, say I have a project that I want to import some settings from, but I don't want to go in and export all of those individually. Well, I can go over here, click on a project, double click, and it's like, whoa, here's all my instruments and all my audio files and all the plugins saved. So then you can just start checking and say, okay, I want the content of that and the plugin of that, and scroll over here, in and out, and the automation. So now if I hit add down here, that's going to add that information on my project. And I didn't have to go into the other project and do that. So now I've got that MIDI information, and I've got the automation, and I've got the instrument and plugins that I was using. And of course, here is how you navigate through your computer on these little things right here. And then of course, you have up here in your preferences kind of everything that you need to have under the hood. One thing that I like to do again is make sure that my interface is selected on my input and output devices, and then have your buffer size to something that is appropriate with your computer. If you're not sure what that is, check out my video on that. And then of course your buffer range and your rewire behavior and all that jazz. I like to keep mine on 24-bit recording. I just like to record everything in 24-bit. Here's where you can change your recording file type if you want WAV or AIFF or CAF. I like to keep my sample accurate automation on volume pan send and plugin parameters, so that way I can make sure my automation is really precise. And you have all of these other menus that you don't really need to get into if you're trying to just get started on Logic. Another area I like to tell people to start with is the key commands. Now, whether you want to set up your own personal key commands or use the existing ones, this is a good way to figure out what key commands are. So say you want to learn how to zoom. Then if you open this up and you just type in zoom, then it will tell you, okay, all these things are zooming. And then you don't have to necessarily program your own. You can just see what they have set up. Or, oh, maybe I want to split by the playhead. Okay, it looks like it's this and this and this, right? So that's a handy way to kind of jump ahead of other people and learn key commands really quick. If you ever think, man, I wish Logic blank, go into the key commands and search a couple keywords, and then you'll find it, and then you can figure out, okay, yeah, I'll just use that for the key command. And then up in File, you obviously have Bounce, which is very important. So project or section, basically what that means is that will get my audio out of my DAW and onto my computer, whether that's an MP3 or whatever. So let's say I want to bounce this region. I can either head down here to this BNCE or up to here, File, Bounce, Project or Section, or hit Command B. And then you're going to get this window. So PCM is usually what I bounce out with Wave. Then you can change all the resolution and sample rate and all that stuff. You can add it to iTunes, and you can also change the parameters within here if you want. And then of course you have your other options like MP3, and you can change the quality on that, M4A or AAC, and then you can burn it directly to a CD or DVD. And then I like to keep my normalize off because if I'm mastering, I don't want Logic to throw on its normalizer. If you want to import OMFs, you can head over here and do other or XMLs or other Logic projects. You can also export all tracks. If you want to send a session to someone and they have a different DAW, then you can do all tracks as audio files. Click on that, and then you have those same kind of options. Do you want to bypass or include all the effects? Do you want to include volume or pan automation? And then overload protection only. I usually like to keep that when I'm sending out stems just in case. And then over here you have your edit. What's cool is you can have an undo history, so you can go back and look at all the changes that you've made on your project. And then you have all of these things that you can explore. And track, you have new track and all that jazz. Rename, create track stack. This is one thing that I think is a really cool feature about Logic. So if you head over here, create track stack, this will basically organize your tracks into a cool folder or bus, so you don't have a bunch of tracks laying around. So say these were all keyboards. I like to usually do summing stack because that's sending them to a bus, whereas folder stack is just putting them in a folder and you can't globally change the parameters. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to do summing stack, and now I can turn down the volume and these things won't come through. Whereas if I had just done a folder stack, then they would have come through. So I can add plugins on this thing and do all kinds of stuff. See how cool that is? You can just collapse that. So I'm going to name this keys. You can change the color. You can sort tracks by color. You can sort them by type. Then of course you have your navigation, you have your recording. This is where you can set your metronome settings. If you don't like the notes or the tonality or the volume, you can change all of it right there. You can also toggle low latency mode within here, and you have these other menus. You have your mix menu. You have your view menu. This shows you different kinds of windows and browsers that you can look through. Here's the actual window menu where you can pull up a bunch of different windows on like keyboard or musical typing. That's how you get this little keyboard here. If you head up on there, if you don't have a physical keyboard, that is a great way to get your ideas into the DAW without going out and buying a keyboard. And then the number right here will tell you what window you're in. And then of course help. And kind of like the key commands, if you ever have a question like, oh man, how do I record? You can just type in record and maybe look, scroll through. They did a really cool job on organizing that. And then right here you have your pointer, which you can change to any of these tools, and then your secondary command. So this one you can click on, and let's say we want to make it a pencil so we can draw, and then when we hold command, then it turns into the pencil. And now I'm starting to draw things. And then when you have your MIDI information, then you can pull up piano roll, which basically allows you to draw in notes. And that's how you can control your virtual instruments, is within the piano roll. Then you have score, which is notating what you've composed, so this lovely drum beat we just came up with. And then your step editor, where you can change these different parameters. Again, this was just a really brief overview of Logic. It's not going way in depth to every little feature, obviously. We're just trying to get you started so you can kind of navigate and figure out where things are and feel a little bit more comfortable. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to my email list, where I will send you exclusive content that we only send to the people on that list. And if you're just getting started, check out the other videos in the course so you can learn how to create your songs and make them sound the way they sound in your head. And I will see you guys soon.